there aren't really conversation. There's only conversations delivered from someone's perspective. There's someone saying what happened, and it's not in a novel where you would get. And then I said this, and then he said this. There aren't any sort of conversations per se.
Yeah.
And I think that's very interesting, because again, it's all about a group of people who know each other really well and are very close friends, but about all the stuff they're not saying, and the consequences of that, obviously, which unsurprisingly, I think if you're reading this book, it's sort of there's some drama and some tragedy within it as well, without going any further. But yeah, so by not talking about stuff properly, we kind of we're seeing what's lying underneath, I guess.
I think definitely that's really well put, and I think most people can probably relate to that sense that we sort of feel more than we know, and we know more than we can say. There's kind of layers to that.
Yeah.
I'm generalizing here, but I think that can particularly be a problem for male friendship. That inability to talk candidly or directly about feeling, and instead triangulating that conversation through like a third object. It's like, do you really like that record? Yeah, I really like that record. Track 2 really gets to me, like, and me. And like the actual subtext there is, I love you. I love you too. Look at us being moved by the same thing. So that sense of how do you have those conversations through action or through triangulation. And as you say, the consequences of not having them.
Yeah, it's and it really. I mean, I've read 2 books this week. One of which, weirdly, is Tim Key's book of poetry, and which is written one about going to LA, and it's a story, as well as being his silly and made up and ridiculous, but like weirdly heartfelt poetry. And both that and this book have really kind of gripped me in my stomach, and weirdly without, it's sort of. It's what goes unexpressed, I think, or what a lot of it's what's not there it's sort of this and Anthony Chapman's book as well, which is we did recently. It's sort of understanding the power of not saying stuff in writing and allowing people to join the dots, but also to work out the gaps between the words, which I think is even though I've been writing for 30 years myself, I think I've not really appreciated that until this sort of reading 2 or 3 books recently, that how powerful that can be.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to not sound like a total wanker when you say things like this, but I do think that a large part of what fiction or any kind of art really is trying to get at is trying to find some sort of way of gesturing at the ineffable or the unsayable things, things that don't necessarily yield to language or to rationality. And one way of doing that, as you say, is to create, and this, I'm trying to think of a less, I'm just going to go for it, like a kind of lacuna. A kind of lacuna where you say all the things around a thing, and the absence, the shape that's left by the absence, is the the thing. And that's the only way of really getting at that thing, is to express and shape the contours of it. Because what you're left with is its outline. In the way that a cop is really only a cop because it's got this big empty space in the middle that holds water.
Yeah.
That's the copness of it, really, I guess.
Yes.